Hello and welcome to the Gospel-Centered Education Podcast, where we connect the dots between kids, teens, culture, and biblical truth. My name is Kelly Allen, and this is our host, Tom Argersinger.
And this week, we get to dive into the calling of a teacher to the education profession. So please join us.
You are listening to the Gospel-Centered Education Podcast, brought to you by Community Christian School in Tallahassee, Florida.
Well, thanks for joining us. We're going to be talking today about the calling of a teacher.
Yes.
And we've got a lot of questions we need to get through.
Yeah, we have a lot to say about this. We've done some research on this.
A lot of research on this, and it's a very important question because things have changed some over the years, and we'd like to dig into that. So let's start with the first question.
Yeah, so teacher health and well-being has been declining.
Yes.
Due to various things that I'm sure you'd like to comment on. But what's the average tenure for a teacher?
Yeah, of course, as with a lot of statistics, it depends on what study you look at. But the average tenure probably is somewhere around 14 to 15 years. Okay. But that's only true if they can get through their first 5. Okay. So 5 is one of those tipping points, for lack of a better term. And so actually the end of the first year is like that too. At least that's an anecdotal experiential thing that I've found. A lot of people talk about quitting after their first year because they're like shocked that it's as complex as it is.
So wait for year 2.
Yeah, hang in there for year 2. And then another one of those tipping point moments typically comes around year 5. Okay. And the stats show that if a teacher can hang in there through at the end of their first year, at the end of their 5th year, it's likely they'll be in the profession for at least, to that 15-year mark.
Yeah. Is that the same with school administrators?
No. Okay. School administrators is much different, and same thing with school superintendents. So, and this is true actually in public, pretty much everything we talk about today is true of public schools and is true to a degree in private and Christian schools. Yeah. So it's not like it's not true at all in those other schools, but it's not true usually to the same degree. So most administrators, I think the average is somewhere between 3 and 5 years. Okay. And then they shift to a different school. Oh, okay. They don't usually change professions. Teachers usually, when they get out, usually they're getting done. Out. Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed lately on Instagram and things like that, there's all these influencers who are saying, who they've billing themselves as, I'm helping teachers to quit teaching and to go into something that's more lucrative, that's less work, and allegedly makes more money. So they're burned out and they're stressed. Yeah, that's one of the biggest problems. Yeah, why? We talked a little bit about this in our last podcast. We talked about what's wrong with modern education. And a lot of the problem is in this issue of emotional stress, which ends up being translated into physical stress. So their teaching is one of the lesser respected professions in America today, statistically. Whenever they do lists of people that are respected for their various professions, teaching is barely on the list. Right. That's a huge problem. People think, well, so what? Well, if you're in that profession, you're trying to make a difference in people's lives. If the average person is not respecting you either as a professional or as a human being sometimes, then that's a problem. Right. So that creates a lot of emotional stress that's over time is difficult to process. And so that as the book title goes, the body keeps score. Yeah. And so therefore teachers are struggling a lot just as a profession. Yeah. And a lot of people are getting out because of the emotional stress level. Yeah, I can imagine they don't get much respect from students, from parents. Not as much. See, it's all relative, right? So we're talking about degrees. It's not like modern teachers get no respect from students. But the number of students who do not respect them and the number of parents who do not respect them is far greater than it was 10 years ago. Do you think that's worse in the United States than it is in other countries? Yeah, I think it is worse. I mean, there's definitely, and of course, education in the United States doesn't rank all that well internationally. And this may be one of the reasons for that. But countries like Finland, those kind of places, I think Ontario is on the list where people are happier in general, and they're happier as teachers. There's probably a lot of reasons for that. Yeah. Singapore, I think, is another one. Yeah. So would you say that's
probably some of the reasons why more teachers aren't getting, or more people aren't getting into the teaching profession.
Yeah, I think they've heard, right? And like I said, I was talking about the Instagram influencers, right? There's a lot of people out there, and frankly, there's a lot of people in the teaching profession who are saying, this stinks.
Yeah.
Don't do this.
Yeah.
You should do something else because it's long hours. It's emotionally taxing.
Yeah.
You're disrespected fairly regularly by either administrators or parents or kids or even your colleagues. So it's a tough work environment in not all schools, but many schools. Cultural pressures to bend to certain cultural norms somewhere on the spectrum, that's a big pressure that people didn't have 10 years ago as much.
Yep.
So all of those things come together, and it just creates this environment for work that is less than ideal.
Yeah, I have an interesting statistic here that says 86% of the U.S. K-12 public schools reported challenges in hiring teachers in 2023 and 24. And then the biggest barriers for hiring teachers were too few candidates applying and lack of qualified candidates.
Yep. I saw an Education Week statistic that didn't get into our notes, but I remember it. And there's somewhere around 4,000 unfilled positions in America right now today. It's actually a little more than 4,000, which is a lot of positions.
Yeah.
They're either not filled or they're filled with someone who doesn't have a certification and is not really fully qualified to actually teach in that role.
Right.
And is that a problem? Yes, that is a problem. Because the expectation is that, just like every other profession, that everybody who does it's going to be really great at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Along the lines of a challenging work environment for teachers, I did see something interesting about this idea of VUCA.
Yeah.
VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And that's the educational world.
It is, it's really
that we have to adapt to.
Yes, and it's really the world.
Yeah.
So I think that military originated in the military, and then business grabbed a hold of it some years ago, and now education's kind of waking up. So everything you read now in education is VUCA.
Yeah.
Because it is a very disrupted profession.
Yeah.
In many, 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 many ways. We're talking specifically about teaching today, but one of the stresses for teachers is figuring out what to do with that technology.
Yeah.
With AI and everything, and does that make it better? Does it make it worse? It depends, et cetera.
Yeah. So what are other ways do you think that teachers are having to adapt to the rapidly changing educational environment?
Yeah, I think some of it is as simple as deciding what we're supposed to teach.
Yeah.
That's it used to be that was not complicated.
Yeah, math, science.
Yeah, and
History.
And now even within those individual things, what should we teach? What should we not teach? What should we not mention? Oh, make sure you mention this. Make sure you don't mention this. And all of that creates more work. First of all, to figure out. I taught AP U.S. History for years. Super hard course for most kids, and not an easy course to teach. Just a lot of factoids and a lot of trying to make connections, put things together. When it's at its best, you're making connections and not just memorizing facts. But even that subject, there's a lot of debate on, what parts of American history? Who should you include? What figures should you leave out? And that gets very messy. And so even something as simple as working through a curriculum now is filled with all these other choices and decisions that maybe weren't true 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Which, again, on top of all those other layers, make it a difficult profession.
Yeah.
There's just no way around it.
Yeah. So do you think that education of teachers, is it sufficient? To prepare them for all of this.
Yeah, and boy, it's easy, right, to pick on, in any sector, it's easy to pick on the preparation programs because everybody does it. It doesn't matter whether it's business school or whether it's education or even medicine. It's easy to pick on the people or even seminary. Yeah. It's easy to pick on the preparers. Yeah. Right, the people who teach the teachers.
The teachers who teach the teachers.
That's right, exactly right.
What's their burnout, right?
But right. Well, the answer, I have to be honest, the answer is, and I get this from really working with a lot of young people coming in education and talking to them and getting feedback on what they learned or what they didn't learn, more to the point. And there's a real issue that there's a lot of relevant and practical things that are just flat not being taught. Or they're being taught in such a minor way that it's as if they're not being taught. A good example of this is classroom management. That's in many teacher prep programs in colleges and universities. It's no longer even a separate course. It's included in something else, and therefore there's a devaluing of that. Now, part of that is a worldview issue, because if you have a worldview that says, well, the kid's not wrong for being, quote, disrespectful. In fact, you can't even call it disrespect. It's really just him being who he is. And therefore, you shouldn't really discipline him. You should redirect him. And there's not really a consequence for what he's doing except being redirected. So if you have all this worldview at work, this hyper-individualistic worldview, then you're naturally not going to say what can you say about classroom management?
Yeah.
The kids there's a sense in which, as long as they don't seriously hurt each other, then you can't really do much.
Yeah, I would think if you can't manage a classroom, then I would get burned out pretty quickly if my classroom was.
Oh, I tell you, man.
If I couldn't teach. If you can't manage a classroom, then you can't teach the class.
100%. I mean, and there's ways to do it that are relevant to where we are as a nation, as a society, that maybe are a little different than they were 20 years ago. So that is definitely true.
Okay.
Right. Super authoritarian, heavy-handed discipline. It just doesn't work well.
I could see that.
But that doesn't mean there aren't guidelines and there aren't rules, and they're not enforced fairly and firmly and consistently, because they should be, because that's just like human nature.
Right.
And there again, that's part of the problem. If you believe that everybody's basically good, then it's kind of like the definition of one of the definitions of classic liberalism is that if people are when you leave them alone, they're basically going to do the right thing. Therefore, you don't need that many rules. Classical conservatism is the opposite.
Right.
People are not basically good, and therefore that you need a lot of rules to get them to do what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
Now that's changed over the years. That's why I make sure I put the adjective classical liberalism, classical conservatism. Yeah. But that's actually a thing. So the way it's being done makes sense in the cultural and philosophical milieu that we're in. However, it's not working all that well. And kids aren't graduating prepared well. Yeah. And that's a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a good thing.
Well, today we're talking about the calling of a teacher. Yeah. So what does it mean to be called?
Yeah, so after all that, it's like all the people who were talking about going into teaching have tuned out. So please stop, go back and catch the rest of it. Because just to be straightforward, who in their right mind would do this?
Why would they go into that?
Why would they go into this? Yeah. I have 2 of my 4 kids who were in teaching.
Okay.
And another one was affiliated with the education profession, so 3 out of the 4. One of them said they would never do it, and they are doing it. And the reason they're doing it is they almost stumbled upon their calling. The other one was clearly called to it, but they were in a situation that was so incredibly difficult that when they ended up starting to have children, then they made some other decisions, and now they may end up going back at some point. So I think it's an interesting question. And so why should we do it? The short answer is, well, the wise guy answer is because someone has to.
It's true.
Somebody has to. Yeah. And the other not so wise guy answer is the people that teaching is a deeply profound thing to do. I cannot think of another profession where you essentially walk alongside someone for a long period of time, at least a year, sometimes longer in high school and things. And you are literally helping to form that person and forge that person. So you're shaping them in various ways, not just academically, and you're also forging them because you're setting up some circumstances that create suffering or a little bit of pain, or it's just hard. And that's how they grow. So they grow from the forming and the forging. And that is, there's not very many professions where that is true. And that is profound. It always has been profound to me. So that's where I begin. Why would somebody want to do this? Because somewhere in your inner self, you have a desire to make a difference in another person's life in a profound way that they could very well remember for the rest of their life. They just, and I could mention an individual profession, but I won't because I don't want to be, pejorative. But very few people, when they're 35, look back and go, hey, I really, that fill in the blank person that worked on something or whatever that was very important at the time, but they didn't necessarily change my life.
Right. Everybody has the favorite teacher.
Everybody does, and they have their least favorite teacher.
They do.
Right? There's that too, right? So I think that is the first point. Is really just the profundity of what we get to do. And for some people, that's a lot. That's very meaningful to them. The second thing is just this issue of calling altogether. I think you unearthed a statistic, about calling in general.
Yeah, the Barna Group, George Barna, he did a study and it said his findings were just over half of U.S. adults, 57% and 56% of Christians believe that understanding one's calling is primarily a solo journey.
Right.
And people have expectations for where that journey may lead.
Yeah.
With most respondents agreeing that there is a perfect job waiting to discover.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. There's just a lot there.
Yeah.
So I guess the way I would approach that is to say that whenever we're using terminology, it's really important to make sure we're actually talking about the same thing. When I talk about calling, I don't necessarily think that what people were defining calling as in these studies is exactly the same thing. And here's what I mean by that. I think for a lot of people, they define calling as this job fits me.
Right.
It fits my personality. It fits my talents and skills. And by the way, I like it. And I can make a really good wage at it. And I think for a lot of people, that's honestly how they define calling. I know because I've talked to a lot of people over the years. And those are important aspects. They're good aspects, but they are far from the whole issue of calling. And so when we talk about gospel-centered education over and against other sorts of education, it reminds me of a book. When I was thinking about this, it reminds me of this book I read a really long time ago called Raising Kids Who Love Jesus. And it's one of those books that has this little sweet picture on the front, and it's a really cool little title. And I remember picking it up, must have been 20 years ago, picking it up and starting to read through it. And then I got stuck on the first 3 pages. And honestly, I'm not even sure if I ever finished the book. Because I know it's almost like you didn't really need to.
There's a lot of food for thought in those pages.
A lot of food for thought. And I remember it to this day. And there's been a lot of books in between, but I still remember these first few pages. And essentially what the guy said, what the author said was, everyone says they want their kids to answer a calling like Jesus and to be like Jesus in that calling. And they're all lying. In so many words, right? Great opening. I think you sold 5 copies of that book, right?
Yeah.
You imagine how that would go over today, right? It's like, no. So basically what he unpacked it in those first couple of pages and said, look at what happened to Jesus.
Yeah.
And look at what Jesus went through. And look at what his followers went through. The people who were actually really his followers. Yeah. Look how that turned out for them.
Yeah.
They weren't wealthy. They weren't highly respected. They weren't prosperous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he was really making an exaggerated point, but it's a good point, I think, still, and that is the calling for a gospel-centered educator is to lay your life down. In fact, really the calling for every educator is to lay your life down for the good of that kid. Yeah. Even the kid who can't stand you. Yeah. Doesn't want to be around you, doesn't like you, maybe even backtalks you. Because some of those kids are the ones who need what you have to give them the most. Yeah. So calling goes far beyond success. Someone who's truly called to something, I say this, it's almost like when you're truly called to something, it's like you almost can't do anything else.
Yeah.
And be even some semblance of happy. And so calling includes laying down your life. It includes, do you have a skill set for this? Of course. Do you enjoy this most days? Because I think if people tell you they love their job every single day, they may not be fully, I don't know, maybe,
right.
I guess there are some. But there's not very many.
Because it's hard, right?
Because you go up and down, even though the job stays the same.
Yeah.
So I think calling, and also what Os Guinness used to say about calling is a great Christian writer is very important. It's like, I've said this in a number of different settings, but capital C calling for Christians is what you and I and every Christian has the same basic calling. And that is to read the Word, to study the Word, to pray, to worship, to live out the Great Commission, to live out the Sermon on the Mount. So we all have a similar unified calling, but we do it different ways, different settings, and that's the little c calling, he would say.
Yeah.
And so the teaching is a little c calling. Just like being a doctor is a calling, or being a plumber is a calling, right?
Yeah.
Because you can infuse the kingdom of God in any one of those settings.
Yeah.
You really can.
Okay.
But the ability to actually shape someone, if that's where your bent is, then that happens in other professions. But I don't know any other profession where it happens as profoundly as teaching.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's another reason why people do it. So in other words, they're willing to put up with all the other stuff. Because what they used to call back in the day, the light bulb moment. When you're teaching a kid and they actually get it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's what that feels like.
Yeah.
That feels really good. You've poured out yourself for that individual.
Yeah.
And they finally get what you're trying to say. Now, those times can feel few and far between. But when they do come, you realize that's the reason I'm getting out of bed every morning. Yeah. When that stops mattering to me, I will not stay in that profession probably, because it's hard. Yeah. And so, but that connective point, that's what keeps getting me out of bed every morning.
Yeah. So if you're getting into it for any other reason, you're probably not going to last very long.
You're probably not going to last very long. That's exactly right. And we still have the conversation regularly. And again, for us as a school, I would say the percentage of people who have a legitimate calling before the Lord is very, very high. Generally, people know why they're here, and that's great. And therefore, we have a relatively low turnover, and that's part of the reason we do that. We do because they know why they're here to begin with, right? And of course, they could be at a different school and still have the calling they have, because that gets into mission. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, that was my next. I think you went over how calling was related to vocation. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Calling and vocation it's like when you talk about strategy terms, it's like goals and objectives. Yeah. Everybody they all use different terms and they often mean the same thing. For me, the way I talk about calling versus vocation versus mission, calling is what we just talked about, at length. Vocation is a even deeper thing that Christians have. Some people would say it's not just Christians. I think it's deeper for people of faith that emerges over time. So a good example is, I'll use myself as an example. So I started out in 1981 as a teacher. And then I was just a teacher, only a teacher for years and years and years and years. And then when it came to about 1997, I first started to get my foot wet in administration. But up to that point, it was all teaching. But now, since then, I've transitioned completely away from direct instruction. Right. So I still teach in some ways, whether it's a staff meeting or it's just really, really, really different. Very different. Still good, it's just very different. But if you were to ask me, what do I think is my vocation in life, it's probably teaching.
Okay.
Even though my calling to connect and the way I talk about it is, why was I put here on earth? I think it's to help people. It's to help people connect life in God with life in the world. That's why I ended up in Christian education, because that's a really good way to do that. It's not the only way to do it, but it's a really good one. And so, but the vocation itself, in other words, what I bring to the world, probably, some of my former students may disagree with this now that I think about it, but is the ability to teach.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see you teaching everywhere you go. I mean, you're teaching right now.
Yeah, kind of,
Yeah.
Right. And so that's it. So for me, vocation is something that emerges over time that's much deeper.
Yeah.
And it's usually one word. It's not usually more than one. It's usually one word.
Okay.
The second thing, or the last thing, is really like, then what's mission?
Yeah.
To me, the mission is how you're applying the vocation and the calling in a given place. So right now, my mission in life, to me, is to be the head of school at Community Christian School and to do all that goes along with that to the best of my ability. And try to also use the gifts and talents that I have for the advantage of the school and other people that work there or that attend there or whatever, community, whatever. And so, but the mission can change. It's like the military, this is your mission right now.
Yeah.
Well, that mission could change, and it could be over here at this other thing. Okay, that makes perfect sense.
But your vocation's the same.
But your vocation, your central vocation, doesn't mean it doesn't have different aspects, doesn't mean the calling can't mutate some, but the reality is who we're meant to be doesn't change a whole lot over time, I don't think.
Yeah. So how would you say that gospel-centered educators are different from other educators?
Yeah. Well, we talked about a little bit of that last week, but the way I would probably summarize it, maybe the best way to say it in a nutshell is they understand the calling issue and the vocation issue in a deeper way. Because when you're called by God to do something, there's something that's more profound than just simply saying, I'm good at that. I mean, frankly, there's a few things that I'm good at that I'm not really called to do. Or
Right.
That's definitely not my vocation.
Yeah.
But I might be halfway good at them, pretty good at them. And other people might go, hey, why aren't you this? Because you're pretty good at that. Because just being good at something doesn't ensure that that's going to be your calling in life.
Yeah.
It often intersects, and the weirdest thing is this. Sometimes, and who does a good job of talking about this is Oswald Chambers. In My Utmost for His Highest, if you read through that devotional. Have you ever read that devotional?
Oh, yeah.
It's one of my top 5 all-time.
Mine
Awesome
too.
devotional. You don't see it very much anymore.
Yeah.
But he's very good about saying, God is expert at calling you to, and even revealing vocations that are not really aligned with your natural gifting. Horrors. What does that mean? Well, I think what it means is he gets you into situations. It doesn't always work that way, but it's like when you do the blank check thing to God and you go, hey, I'm going to do whatever you want me to do. Okay, well, that means you may be not at all have an affinity for what I'm going to call you to do at the beginning. There are a lot of missionaries that were like that. They're like, what?
Yeah.
And so they show up and they do it, and over time, I wonder what, can you think of a reason why that might be true? Why would he do that to people, so to speak?
Well, I was thinking about, I think you had mentioned this last week, like a teacher's job is kind of to draw stuff out of you.
Yeah, educare, the idea of drawing out. Yeah.
He's the ultimate teacher, so he's putting you in situations to draw those things out of you, maybe.
He is, that's right. And also just in general, I think he puts us in situations that we're not fully prepared for, or not fully even gifted for, so that we understand that we're supposed to be dependent on him.
Yes.
And that sounds like weird. It sounds very strange. It's to our modern ears, that's like, what? Well, surely God's whole purpose is to see me be self-actualized. And it's like, not really.
Right.
Not in the sense that moderns use the term self-actualization. He's not there to actualize yourself, quote, yourself.
Yeah.
He's there to give you a new self. In Jesus. That's what he's trying to do.
Dependent on him.
Right. And he's trying to reframe the whole thing into more of the real self and get rid of the false self that we build up in our lives.
Yeah.
Thomas Merton's a writer who talked a lot about that the false self versus the true self. And even Aristotle talked about that too. We talked about that. He talked about everything, and him and Plato, and all kind of traces back somehow. Yeah. But no, so I think that's really to me that's a very powerful part of it. And so and sometimes, and again, look, if somebody's listening to this and they're going, wait, mission versus vocation, What? I mean, it's not, what label you put on it is not really the most important thing.
Right.
The most important thing is, as a believer, you sign the blank check, you give it to the Lord, and you go, I'm up for it. It doesn't even have to necessarily make sense to me. And it may not be all that enjoyable, especially at the beginning. But if I know you're in it, then I'm there.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. I think as long as we have people that are willing to do that, then we're going to have people going into education, believers or not. And especially in gospel-centered education, there's a very bright hope for that because God's still in the business of calling people that way. He really is. But why? Because of what I said a minute ago. Because it's a profoundly shaping profession that helps to actualize in some way what the church is teaching. So Christian education or gospel-centered education helps to make that real in that kid's life on a 10 times basis amount of time per week, you know. And then they graduate, they go on to their career, whatever that is, and then they begin to find their vocation.
You know what I love to see about CCS? The students that come back to teach at CCS.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
It is. It's so special because they had a special time at CCS and they want to come back and kind of do that.
Yeah, and I've talked to some of them, and you know, a lot of it is what we said. You know, they feel that desire because it was profoundly affecting to them, and what could be more fun than having that kind of an impact on somebody else? Yeah. Now, do you have to put up with a lot of stuff on the way to that? Sure. Because if you know, how many things that are really worth doing are simple? Right. Not very many. Yeah. And how many of them are easy? Not very many.
But do we want it simple and easy? Sometimes.
I think a lot of people do.
But sometimes people get bored with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, which is maybe that's why you see a lot of hopping from job to job with people, you know. Yeah. But I've found that this conversation is one of the most valuable ones we've had because I have a contact with a lot of like college age students and also alumni of the school and just people in general. And this is a very confusing point. Like if you were to pinpoint one thing that most kids struggle with is, I don't know what to do with my life. Right. I have no idea what to do with my life. So I'm going to go I'm going to spend 6 figures in a college degree and then promptly do absolutely nothing with it. And then the answer is, I'm going to become a plumber. Yep. So that's the new thing, right? I'm going to become an electrician, and that's going to be great. Then they realize, oh, this is hard. This is hard too. This is hard too. And I've got to go to school like for an electrician a long time, and I've got to learn a lot of stuff, and I got to apprentice and do all it's hard. And if you're a plumber, you're on your knees all the time. It's just, so if you're called to that, then you'll get out of bed and do it. Yeah. And that sounds weird to people. It's like, you're called to be a plumber? I believe. If you're a Christian, yes. Yeah. I believe that's part of the way of seeing the world. Yeah. Yeah, the kingdom, applying the kingdom in that specific mission and specific calling. Yeah. But is that what the culture is saying? No. Right. Not at all. Culture is saying, go live where you want to live, go do what you want to do, and make sure the job self-actualizes you. And when you stop learning at that job, then you quit. Right. Or you could be faithful. Well, of course, there is sometimes when you need to quit a job, of course. But nowadays, it's
when things get difficult. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And have you heard all these new terms? If you go on LinkedIn and you spend any time on LinkedIn, have you done this?
I don't think so.
Quiet quitting. Quiet quitting? Quiet quitting, which is, you can guess what that means, right? Just basically you're at your desk, but you're not really doing it. So it's like you've quit, but you haven't told anybody, or whatever. That's probably not a good definition.
You're taking a nap.
Yeah, or whatever. So there's all these things that are happening in workplaces, by the way, I have to share this with you real quick. And that is, there's a new term. I learn new terms all the time. Okay. This one's, I think it's called work slop. Okay. Work slop, right? Work slop is an AI-related term, which is essentially, I think this is hysterical on one level and also frightening on another. It's like, so what people are doing in workplaces that use a lot of AI, they're asking AI to do whatever task they're supposed to do, and then they're passing along to someone, and not editing it, and then passing along to someone else, and then they have to edit it.
Oh my gosh.
And so they call that work slop.
Wow.
This came out in Harvard Business Review and also Stanford. And so, so it's like, and so all these people are going, why do I have to correct your mess?
It seems like I saw something on a website one time that you could definitely tell it was AI written because at the end it was like, can I help you with anything else? They had just cut and pasted.
Well, that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
It's great. And we just used AI
that's
at school.
work slop.
Yeah, right. The particularly work slop is somebody else has to do my work for me. That's really what this is about.
Like, take my work slop.
Take my work. I'm going to give you something because it's what AI did, but I'm not going to edit it or really work with it. Now it's your problem.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh man. So people have calculated, like LinkedIn, right? So there's studies and everything.
Yeah.
So people have calculated that somehow this is costing businesses an average of like $138 a week. It's like, how do you know that?
Oh my gosh!
So it's costing money because people are doing this.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, all I'd say, I think calling of a teacher, calling in general, but calling of a teacher is one of the most profound things.
Yeah.
It's specifically profound for gospel-centered educators.
Yeah. So let me ask you, how do you think that parents can better partner with teachers?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've touched on this in other, and again, the tendency here for educators is frankly to throw parents under the bus.
Yeah.
That's very common nowadays.
Yeah.
But trying to avoid that part, because I think most parents genuinely are trying to do the best they can.
Right.
I think they don't always have all the right information, or they're not accessing the right, maybe the most helpful sources for that information. So I think one of the ways is start with ask yourself, what do you believe about teachers? Like I talked with a parent some years ago, different school, and they said, I really believe that the people that go into teaching literally can't do anything else. They're not very smart, and they don't understand the real world at all.
That's the saying, right? Those who can't do teach.
Yeah, it's like a saying. And they're saying this to me. I'm like, based on what? Well, just in my profession, because this particular person worked on Wall Street and made millions of dollars. They're like, how much money do you make? I'm like, that question is only relevant if you think that's the only measure of success. It's not. So okay, congratulations. You make $5 million a year. How's your marriage? Or whatever. Of course that could be true of teachers too. But anyway, so that I think it's kind of a complicated thing for people. But let's circle back to, what was the question again? Let's circle back
How
to the
can
question.
parents
better
partner with teachers? Yeah.
Figure out ways to trust them. And that gets rooted in, if you honestly, if we've talked about this before, but it bears repeating, I think, if as a parent, and I'm speaking as a parent of 4 kids, if I believed that I was the only person who truly knew my kid and truly understood everything about them, then I wouldn't trust anybody else.
Right.
I wouldn't trust teachers. I wouldn't just trust youth workers. And I'm not saying like complete, I'm not paying attention kind of trust. I'm talking about basically I believe you have something to contribute to the conversation.
Yeah.
And, frankly, that's not the way a lot of parents approach it today. If something goes wrong in the classroom, when we sit down for parent conferences, sometimes, more often than it used to be, people are going like, well, the problem cannot be my kid. There's only one other person in the room. It must be you. Well, check your first premise, because your first premise probably is not accurate. Your kid's not perfect. And you don't necessarily see them as perfect because you're really, really biased, which we all are towards our kids. So I think the first thing is create spaces to figure out ways to trust, to build trust. Now, the other side of the coin is teachers have to be trustworthy.
Right.
Which does not mean they're perfect. So it's a catch-22. It's like, well, I'll trust you if you do everything perfectly.
Yeah.
It's like, how does that work in your marriage? It's like, it's never going to be perfect. But having said that, teachers should communicate well. They should be honest. They should give people heads up. They shouldn't surprise parents. That's a sure way to degrade trust, is surprising parents. And so there's a lot that teachers can do. Be fair. Can you be perfectly fair? Well, fair is a relative term, right? So it depends on who you ask. If my kid's doing worse than, kid A is doing worse than kid B, somebody must be doing something wrong to kid A. Not necessarily. Maybe kid A is just not performing.
Yeah.
It's possible. So
Maybe
anyway.
if we just realize we're all on the same team and we all want the child to flourish.
Yeah, and I think, well, the question, yes, and every educator says that, and it's true, most parents say that.
I would say most parents would say that.
But what does it mean? The question is, what does that statement
What's flourishing?
mean? What does it mean? So we're all on the same team. But really, for some people, what that means is what that does is it gives me opportunity to tell you what to do, to tell you what I think about this, and the way I'm thinking about it is the only right way to think about it. Well, that's not really a team. That's something, but it's not really a team. And so I think if we want to have, and by the way, I've just finished a course where there was a lot of discussion. It was with a secular university. It was very, very good. But there was a lot of conversations. There was an international cohort of people. It was a great experience. But there was a lot of conversation about how do you get parents to trust teachers? And the reality, and of course, all of the conversation, interestingly, was on the teacher. Well, you have to fix this. Well, you have to be trustworthy, yes. But the other person has to also extend themselves towards you in some way, just like a marriage, in order for there to be mutual trust. So is it complicated? Yes, if people just in general think that people they don't have the good of their kid at heart because maybe they're saying, look, your kid's not very good at this.
Right.
Or they need to grow in this area, and that's really hard for a lot of parents today.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, well, as a parent, I'll ask you, what do you look for when you work with teachers, like with your kids? What do you look for in the relationship?
Yeah, I think as a parent, I have trouble finding my place in my child's education.
Okay.
And so I do want to trust teachers to tell me how to do, stuff with them at home or whatever. But I don't know. I think I'm more of you do it.
Okay. All right. When there are some people that are like, here you go.
Yeah. And I think that teachers get frustrated with that because, I need to be doing things
Sure,
as well.
there is a partnership. Yeah. It's not one or the other, right?
Yeah. So just finding that balance in that partnership is.
Yeah. Which is what a lot of the statistics we looked at really supported.
Yeah.
Everyone is struggling with that. It doesn't matter what kind of school you're in. Everyone is struggling with that. How do you build this partnership, better? And that's something that we can certainly grow in as a school. There's no doubt about that. A lot of it's communication, I think. I think good communication, regular communication really helps build trust.
Yes, I agree.
Doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
Basic stuff like that, But it is... it's not, like I said, it's not, when you look at the stats and you talk to people, it's not something that's working well very many places, which doesn't make it okay. It just makes it widespread.
Right.
Makes it common. It's not okay. I think if both parties, and then teachers, honestly, on the other side, teachers, especially veteran teachers, get cynical. 100%. Not everyone, but many people get very cynical, like a lot of, talk to a lot of veteran police officers. Often can be or fire department, EMS, can be very cynical about human beings because human beings are hard.
Yeah.
And so we as teachers and administrators have to be especially those of us a little longer in the tooth, we have to say, hey, we got to be careful to not be cynical.
It brings you back to calling and vocation. Like, why are you in it?
Why are you in this, right? And when you stop when you stop caring about the people you're trying to help, whether you're a missionary or a pastor or a teacher or a policeman or EMS or doctor or whatever it is, when that happens, you probably should retire.
Yeah, maybe God has another
thing for you, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe you need to change professions.
Yeah.
Because frankly, those helping professions don't need more people that don't want to be there.
Yeah. I agree.
So it's one of those tricky things.
Yeah.
So it's a great topic, though.
It really is. I've learned a lot in this conversation today.
I love this topic, and it's because there's no bottom to it.
Yeah.
And just talking, I love just the fact that we're talking about calling when that's not a very common conversation nowadays, or it's completely misunderstood. And I want to say one more thing about that, and specifically to people that are Christians. Many, many young people, college-age people say this. They go, okay, well, I asked God what I was supposed to do with my life. I didn't hear anything, so I'm just doing whatever I want. Okay, rewind. Were you were you approaching and working on the big C calling? In other words, were you attending church regularly? Were you in the Word regularly?
So you could hear His voice.
Were you learning how to hear His? It takes practice. Were you learning how to recognize His voice both in Scripture and through the Holy Spirit in real time, through other people, through community? Back to that stat about that calling is primarily a solo journey. Not really. It is not really a solo journey. So where did we get that? I don't know where we got that. Hyper-individualism. Discerning calling was never meant to be a solo journey. It was meant to be done in community of people that care about you. Originally, it was families and parents. As that has degraded, people are looking for, so it's like, well, I guess I'm supposed to do it myself. Well, if you have to, you have to, but that's not the best way to do it because God uses other people, in those spaces to help you discern. So if a young person is listening today and they're going, this is all a bunch of gobbledygook. This is stupid. I mean, I don't know what this means to listen, or I don't hear anything. Well, check the first boxes first. So like, show up, man.
Yeah.
Show up. Open the Word on a near daily basis. Read the Word and work your way through the Word. Pray. Ask God. Attend church regularly. Worship with God's people. Listen to what your pastor is saying, because he is an authority in your life. Just like teachers are an authority, and they can often be very helpful in discerning calling. Not just guidance counselors or things, but teachers and administrators often are very good at that because they do know you and they care about you mostly. Most of the time. So it's not solo, it's a group effort. And I think if we shifted our thinking about that, well, maybe we'd have less confused people, you think?
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully.
We need community, right?
Yeah, we do. We can't get away from it. We're built that way.
Yeah.
The problem is a lot of people have had stinky community.
Yeah.
And they gave up on it. Well, community is not perfect because people are not perfect, but I still think over time, that's the way God means for us to be.
I agree.
I mean, that's a good place for us to stop today.
I think so.
I think it's been good. So as always, if you forget everything else that we talk about, remember, I'm going to say a couple things today. Remember that Jesus really is Lord, and that we should stand firm in love, and that we should show up and live out the kingdom wherever He calls us.
I like that.
Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to the Gospel Centered Education Podcast, brought to you by Community Christian School in Tallahassee, Florida. You can find us online at myccs.org.